Hi there, Kayla again, and so I'm glad to see you back. But what I wanted to talk about this week might not be for everybody, but it could be really helpful for those of you who are experiencing this issue. Sometimes we have our period and then it stops and then it seems to start again, maybe, kind of, not really. It's indecisive, and then we have another regular period after that. So what's going on? What's going on in our body? There's a few things that could be happening. And so we're going to talk about what those things are, and then I'm going to give you a few steps if you're experiencing kind of irregular bleeding, or mid-cycle bleeding is really what it's called, so you know what to do next. So we're going to cover that at the end of the video. Okay, so I'm going to cover 3 common things that could be going on. The first is that it could be ovulatory bleeding. What happens is some women during ovulation will actually experience a little bit of bleeding. This could be because of hormonal fluctuations in their specific case, and that is something that it could be normal. It could be, usually this is about the level of spotting, so it's not very heavy, and it usually happens inconsistently from month to month. Also, if this is ovulatory bleeding, it's usually happening between 1 and 2 days. It's not very long, it's very, very light. However, if someone's suffering from anemia, which is low iron levels, low red blood cells, that could cause this type of bleeding to be prolonged, and it could result in further anemia. So that's something to consider. Definitely talk with your doctor if that's something that could be happening for you. Number 2, it could be another period. So if this is another period, what could be happening is your ovulation, instead of being once a month, could be happening more frequently. So the hormones in your body could be happening more frequently, which means that there could be hormones from our pituitary gland that are being overproduced. That would be FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone, or luteinizing hormone. And that could be for a variety of different reasons. It could be because of more downstream hormones like estrogen and its production or overproduction. So that could be part of it. If someone's ovulating twice in a month, they could be getting 2 periods. That's something to talk about and with your doctor, that in order to balance those hormones, you really need to start to lengthen that cycle. So instead of it being a 14-day cycle, extending it out to being a 28-day cycle, ideally. Now, the third is a little wishy-washy. So it's what I call continuation of your period. Now, this could be for a variety of different reasons. Probably the most reasons are in this section. So it could be from high estrogen levels. If we have high estrogen, we're going to develop a thicker uterine lining. We're going to have more blood to shed, and sometimes our body might not shed it all right away. We might, some of your period days might be lighter or heavier than others, and if you happen to have a light day, maybe just spotting, and then it goes back to heavier bleeding, that could just be a continuation of your period. It depends on how long that's going on, whether it's healthy or not. And then the other thing that could be happening is iron deficiency or anemia. Now, these are interrelated. They're a little different from each other, but often they're connected. So if you don't have enough iron, your body's not assimilating that from your diet properly, then what can happen is we're not forming enough red blood cells. Red blood cells are what form the lining of our uterus. They also cause our blood to be able to clot properly, deliver oxygen properly, all of those things. And so if that's not able to happen, sometimes when we're building up that uterine lining, it really can't form very well. And so instead of the body forming it, it might continue bleeding because it cannot form a temporary clot and layer along the uterus. And so therefore it's going to be bleeding instead. And then the other thing that could be happening is PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. I've talked about this before as well. And this, as I've mentioned, could be because of inconsistent ovulation. Women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, they often have irregular menstrual cycles, and that can be connected because the ovaries are not quite functioning as they normally should be. And now I don't want to discourage anyone. This is a condition that usually can be diagnosed in some cases by multiple different tests. Definitely talk with your doctor about what some of those are, but I've personally gone through some of them myself because of concerns about that, and so that could be what is happening. Inconsistent ovulation because of PCOS could lead to multiple bleeding times within a month. Now, the last few things that could be happening are a little bit more serious, and this is why I want to encourage everybody to talk with their doctor. So the first thing is menopause. If you're starting to go through menopause, people will probably have inconsistent menstrual cycles. We could be bleeding for a little bit, we could be not bleeding for a long time, and that is because our ovaries are starting to slow down, our pituitary gland is starting to slow down of hormone production, and generally that process is just tapering off. So that could be a normal process of menopause. Now, the other two are fibroids or cysts. These are things that usually would happen on the uterus, ovaries, or could happen around the cervix. And so these are really big health concerns, because if they're not addressed early enough, they could grow rather large. They could be difficult. They could require operations and surgery to resolve properly. But cysts and fibroids, they can actually produce more hormones in and of themselves. So if it's an ovarian cyst, it's going to produce similar hormones to our ovaries, but it's going to produce that more than our ovaries would. So we're kind of getting an extra little ovary that's growing. In our uterus, that same thing can happen. So fibroids usually happen along the uterus, and that is something that could cause more uterine lining development, therefore more bleeding or inconsistent bleeding. So those are things that definitely you need to talk with your doctor about if that's a concern you have, if it's something that's familial, or you've had a concern about that, or this is an issue that's been going on for a long time. Definitely talk to them about what those options are, how to investigate to see if that's one of the causes, but hopefully that's not, and this video will be helpful in identifying that. So now let's talk about what we can do about this situation. So the first thing we can do about having inconsistent bleeding is get a physical exam. A doctor needs to look at our uterus, they need to look at our hormones. Hopefully when you have that physical exam, blood work can be taken, and the blood work can help reveal what hormones might be out of balance, if any. If they're not, great, it points the doctor in another direction, hopefully. And the next step would be, if there's a physical exam, there's blood work that's taken, nothing has been abnormal, talk with your doctor about what possible causes there are. I find that women might be concerned about asking this type of question, and in our current medical system, it's unfortunate that it might not be a conversation that could be had without an extra cost. But I think it's worth some extra cost to know what's going on in our body, what concerns the doctor might have, and that way we know what they're thinking. If this is something that's more serious, what's the course of action? And that's the last thing that I wanted to talk about, is create a plan with your doctor. If you find that your gynecologist is not able to meet your needs, feel free to reach out to me. I am in contact with naturopathic doctors, natural physicians of other designations as well, and they would be able to help create a different type of plan if that's what you need, whether that be natural, integrative, or other kind of, maybe you need surgery or something like that, but you want to have it be less invasive, anything like that. So feel free to reach out to me. I've been teaching and in connection with medical professionals for a number of years, so I have developed relationships with many of them, and just let me know and I'll be able to connect you with people who might be able to help out. So I hope that these steps are simple enough for you to be able to take some action, and if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the comments. I'll look forward to that. And until next time, be well.